Hello, and welcome to this afternoon's virtual training, Back to School Safety Preparedness, Training and Drills for K-12 Schools. On behalf of the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency, CISA, thanks for joining us as we kick off another installation of our virtual training series designed for the K-12 community. Before I go on, I'd like to take a moment to acknowledge the tragedy that occurred yesterday at Annunciation Catholic School in Minneapolis, Minnesota. There's no words to accurately describe, convey the devastation and heartbreak we're feeling at the loss of the innocent lives. We join the entire nation in offering our condolences to the families, friends, loved ones affected by the senseless act of violence. I'd also like to thank each of you for your commitment to be here today and your continued dedication to the mission of keeping our nation's students, educators, and schools safe. There's truly no greater cause available. My name is Don Huff, and I'm a member of the CISA School Safety Task Force, and I'm honored to serve today as our moderator. We know how busy this time of year is and how exciting as we get back to school for school leaders. I deeply appreciate your commitment to creating safer learning environments. Today's session is really going to focus on what school principals, assistant principals, school safety staff can do as we prepare for this new school year. This training will focus on the critical components of school safety, about planning and conducting effective drills, training, and teaching emergency procedures to students and staff. When we leave this afternoon, I hope you take three things with you. First, knowledge of best practices for planning and conducting drills and training, thinking through what's developmentally appropriate, trauma-informed, and aligned with your school's safety culture. Second, practical strategies for teaching emergency procedures to staff and students that helps them ensure they have confidence to respond during a crisis. And finally, third, actionable tools, resources, things you can put your hands on to help integrate, upskill these practices into your school safety system. Our virtual training series more broadly tackles topics of critical importance to school leaders like you. We aim to lift voices up from the field, share lessons learned, and equip you with tools and strategies to strengthen your school community. To that end, I'm thrilled to be joined today by two incredible leaders. First, Pat Hamilton, the Alliance Director for the I Love You Guys Foundation, who brings over 2 decades of experience in public education and has been instrumental in the development of the national implementation of the Standard Response Protocol, SRP, and the Standard Reunification Method, SRM. Also joined today, Michelle Gay, the co-founder of Safe and Sound Schools, a nationally recognized school safety advocate who's dedicated her life to improving safety and security in schools following the tragic loss of her daughter in the Sandy Hook school tragedy. Pat and Michelle will share their experiences, insights, real-world examples to help all of us strengthen our preparedness. A few housekeeping items before we dive in. First, I want you to know that all participant microphones are muted to minimize background noise, but we do want to hear your questions. On the right side of your screen, you'll see a question and answer panel. You're encouraged to submit questions throughout today's training, and we'll address many of them towards the end of the session. Second, in that same pod, keep an eye out for additional resource links, information shared throughout the session that you can download, bookmark, save, share, take away from today. With that, let's get started. Michelle, Pat, welcome. Thank you for being here.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, thank you.
We know that emergency preparedness and crisis response is at the forefront for school administrators' minds year-long, but particularly right now as our young people come back to school. School leaders across the country are working to build that foundation, that culture of safety and security. And today we're really going to focus on what do we know that can help them. So to start, I'd like to take a look at some schools and districts across the country, some recent news reports about this back to school season and what schools just like yours are doing all over the country.
All right, this morning you might see a lot of flashing lights at East Lyme High School, but don't panic. This is all just a drill.
Your reporter Roger Suzanne live there at East Lyme High School this morning for us. Roger, good morning. So you tell us this is part of an important process to keep those students safe, right?
Good morning, and that is absolutely right. And you know, it's interesting, when you talk with emergency responders, as we get to do quite a bit in this job, they always tell us it is so important for everybody to prepare for potentially unsettling situations. So with that in mind, during today's big drill, emergency responders will take part, but also parents will, teachers, and even students.
New at 4:30, Colbert County emergency response teams came together today for their annual active shooter training drill. With the upcoming school year just days away, WAY 31 reporter Paige Meyer was there when classrooms were turned into simulated crisis zones.
Agencies from across North Alabama came together Friday morning to prepare for the worst. While no one hopes for an emergency, the Colbert County Sheriff's Office is making sure they have a response plan to keep our schools safe. Friday morning, agencies gathered at Colbert County High School to work together for a cohesive emergency response. Firefighters, law enforcement, EMS, EMA, and more ran simulations to prepare for the event of an active shooter.
Some specialized training this week is helping prepare teachers to reunite students and parents in an emergency. Emma Bucher shows us what the training covered and how it can make schools safer.
Hi, how's it going?
Going well.
Student's name?
Whether it's gas leaks, severe weather, or an active shooting.
All right, and then can I see your ID?
School districts need to be prepared for anything.
Follow around the corner there.
Thank you. The Rock Island Milan School District hosted a 2-day training on reunification methods. Essentially, how parents and kids can be reunited following any sort of emergency.
Last name is Murphy, Haru Murphy.
Yes.
Okay, can I see your ID, please?
The training is a partnership between the I Love You Guys Foundation, the district, and local first responders.
That was just a brief glimpse into some of the ways that schools are working hard to strengthen their safety preparedness this year. As we just saw, there's a variety of approaches and ways. Where I want to start today is really a discussion about drills. And when I think about drills, and in my time in schools, it was how do we think about drill in the school context? You know, maybe that for a lot of people elicits fire drills or lockdown drills. However, research consistently shows that the value that drills can have in helping students and staff build muscle memory and prepare the school community to respond safely and move quickly if warranted. So, Pat Michaud, where I think I want to start is how can school administrators make their drill series more than, okay, today we have a drill, check the box, we have to do this, and instead drills be seen as part of the safety culture that everyone in the building, students and staff, all have a hand in. What are some of the drill topics that schools are considering that you would consider top of mind?
Well, I would say first, looking back at what we do well as schools, it's a place of learning and growth, right? Mm-hmm. and constant improvement. And so I think sometimes we get really caught up in the kind of operational side of drills and forget that there's so much great work, so many great conversations, so many great opportunities for learning and discussion that can happen before the drills that actually make the drills so much more meaningful for our students, for our staff. And by the way, all that learning stuff that's what we do. That's what we're set up for in schools. And so I think I would start there in terms of how we build or lean into safety as part of our culture. Well, if our culture is one of learning and growth and improvement, let's just bring the conversation there and invite participation and engagement from our students and staff.
Absolutely. I mean, I was thinking the same thing as you were saying that, Michelle, is we are good at teaching and learning. That's what
we do.
That's absolutely right. So starting with the learning part of this and why we do this. And then, you know, for us, when I was in public education, one of the things that we did to make our drills more meaningful was we invited guests. And those guests it'd be law enforcement, it could be fire, people in our community that were stakeholders in that work. Invite them to those exercises. And it doesn't always have to be, like you said, Dawn, it doesn't have to be active assailant. We need to talk about all of these types of crises, because you know, on any given day across the United States, we're dealing with maybe there's a medical emergency in the hallway, maybe it's a staff member having a medical emergency, or maybe there's a dysregulated student, a student that's having a little bit of a problem right in that moment. We just need to keep kids in a hold. And so practicing those things will help you practice the big things too. Yeah. So you don't always have to practice that one big thing. Practice for the little things. We face it every day in schools across the country. There's always something happening.
Yeah, I can tell you both come from that education background. It shined through there in the answer. I think that's exactly right, because it can be overwhelming to sort of think about the big picture. But I really like that sentiment. Other than active, assailant, those sort of things, what are some of the other threat topics or different things that you think schools are drilling on, or they may want to consider drilling on?
I mean, I think about, like, I think the most heavily used protocols that from the feedback that we get, the most heavily used protocols that we hear about are definitely the hold in your classroom, which is that's everything. We're just going to stay out of the hallways, and then secure. And secure is we just need to bring everyone inside the building, lock all the exterior doors, because there's something happening out in the community that we don't want to get into the school. Yeah. So those are the two most frequently used protocols, and so it makes sense to practice and drill those protocols. Sure. And again, it doesn't have to be any drama or trauma to that when you do that. So again, I'll say any given day across the country, maybe there's something, maybe there's a bank robbery happening or a convenience store robbery or something like that that's just a few blocks away from your school. Let's just bring everyone in and we can practice that. Don't practice it at 9 a.m. maybe when everyone's already inside the building. Yep. Let's practice that during recess or lunch recess. Let's just do a real quick, secure drill. Bring everyone in maybe 5 minutes early. Make sure you prepare your teachers that the kids are going to be coming back to classroom 5 minutes early and run the drill.
I think too, our staff, you mentioned preparing teachers, where we can, when we're having a drill, sometimes that context is helpful for teachers. So kind of thinking through what are some of the unexpected things. It's not always an emergency. Like you said, sometimes it's just something unexpected that has come up that's going to require us to shift away from our normal business. And we're going to engage one of these protocols. So things like, there can be crime in the neighborhood, there can be a car accident, there can be something involving, railroads, hazmat, there can be a funky smell coming from the kitchen. I mean, that's a pretty frequent, we hear that one. In the microwave. Yes, the popcorn, all sorts of things, that are reasons that we might need to engage one of those protocols, just to be sure.
Yeah. As school leaders across the country are thinking about what drills are right for their school culture, for their safety, and where they're at in that journey, what are some of the best practices to ensure that the drills leaders select both consider take a trauma-informed approach and a developmentally appropriate approach for their population of students? How do you guys think through that?
I would imagine that Pat's going to agree with me on this. I think it starts with the multidisciplinary team. I think one of the best ways that we can ensure we're taking a trauma-informed approach and that we are presenting material or options or information that is appropriate to the developmental levels or ages and stages of our students is to really gather that team, kind of look at it from all different lenses, the classroom, operations, administration, school-based mental health. I think that multidisciplinary approach is kind of lightens everybody's load a little bit and helps us to make sure that we are really looking at it from all angles. And I think too, when we think about developmentally appropriate, I love developmentally appropriate. That's my whole thing. That's what so much of our work is around Ed Safe and Sound Schools. But it can be sort of a cumbersome, sort of edu-speak kind of a term. And really, what we're getting at is ages and stages. What are the ages and or stages of the people in this house, whether they're adults, whether they're early learners, whether they're middle schoolers, whether they have cognitive disabilities that we need to consider, physical impairments, things like that. And then we use the term all the time, no drama, no trauma. It sticks. But really making sure that we're focused on behaviors, we're focused on actions. What are the goals? What do we want people to be able to do in a situation? And what can we provide them to make that happen? And I guarantee you, nobody has to dress up like a bad guy. There doesn't need to be any fake smoke or simulation. Thank goodness, Pat, probably when you flew in today, you sat through the whole demo, that conversation about where your exits are on the plane and all of that really important information. And thankfully, there wasn't a simulation, right? You got what you needed.
We did not depressurize the cabin at 36,000
Thank goodness,
feet
right?
to
Thank
practice
goodness.
That.
Exactly, yeah.
It's about meeting the staff and the students where they are in the moment, and we constantly have new staff joining our team. And in public education right now, and education in general, there's lots of turnover. So it's understanding where your staff is with their journey and creating that culture of school safety, and the students themselves too. So age-appropriate drills, and I think. For me, I was always on the operations side of the house. I was never a classroom teacher, so I would have to go, and my thing was to go talk to the teachers or go talk to the school principals and find out what is appropriate for you. Now, we're always going to have some consistent things in our drills. We're always going to have law enforcement there. We have been having more and more conversations with law enforcement about how they're going to enter a classroom post-crisis or during drills. We don't want that to be traumatic either. So just knowing where your teachers and your students are in the moment will help. The first drill of the year, we probably don't want to come in there and just have a lockdown drill. Let's certainly talk about training.
Let's soft launch it a little bit, right?
Let's train and talk about that. It's going to make the drill much more effective, and it's going to create learning opportunities for everyone involved. So just understanding where people are is a great place to start. And that starts with communication. Communication. Yes.
I like what you said, Pat, too, about some things are non-negotiable, right? If there is a crisis, you can expect that law enforcement is going to show up, maybe fire, maybe EMS, right? And if we learn by asking that is anxiety-provoking, that is a hardship, that is something that activates an experience or a memory for any of our students or staff, then we know in advance that that's something we need to work on, work toward. How can we make you more comfortable? How can we build those relationships with our community partners? I also love the idea of the guests. For those drills are just somehow much more meaningful and much more fun and exciting when we have these special guests that are coming in, that are participating, that are offering their expertise, and by the way, modeling other career opportunities for some of our youth as well.
There's no one size fits all when it comes to this, is what I'm hearing, right? There's a lot of considerations, and school leaders are best to understand that unique circumstances for theirs. And teachers, the multidisciplinary point, or other adults, know their young people the best, right? Yeah. Some of the most innovative things I've seen around drills really come from teachers understanding, for example, the extraordinary population they're working with, and hey, this is what's going to work for this student, and how do we work back from that to it can fit 100%. Into the drill approach, as opposed to top down, this is the way, this way or the highway.
Some of the best ideas that we had for managing drills came from the classroom teachers. Lockdown lollipops. Yeah. That was never my idea. That was a classroom teacher. I walked into a classroom during a lockdown drill, and all the students had little lollipops, and it's like, tell me about this.
Yeah. Yes.
And after that, every elementary school classroom that I had from about 4th grade down all had lollipops, bags of lollipops.
You want to keep them quiet. That'll do it.
And if someone said, I don't have lollipops, well, I'm going to go to the local convenience store and buy you some, and I'll be right over.
Without a doubt. Just those little dum-dums, just a little bit of sugar,
Not too much. We don't want to violate National School Lunch Program rules. I would hear about that from my nutrition services
I'm
director.
told there's some science, though, behind just a little bit of sugar at in a moment of crisis. It can change kind of change the neural pathways for the moment. So I'm going to go with that. Okay. I don't know. Scientists out there, right?
So for school leaders across the country, they're considering what's right and what set of drills and approaches make sense for them. They understand the importance of it. Where can they go and find some options, some resources, some models that might be right for their context? Can you make some suggestions?
I'm going to embarrass Pat for a second here. So there is it's kind of an older video that your former school district put out, Adams 12 5-star schools. And you can find it on YouTube. Many of us still use it and refer to it, specifically around reunification. Okay. I just think, if a picture speaks 1,000 words, a video, I don't know, 1,000,000, right? And just showing people what it can look like. This is how we move through this type of crisis. This is how we move through this type of crisis. These are the steps that you can expect. Here's what your role is. Just phenomenal. So just, head to YouTube, look up reunification, Adams 12. That's all you need to do. And you'll see some great resources there. But I know on both of our organizations' websites, treasure troves of resources that we've collected from the field. We have toolkits that provide some guidance there. But in terms of really modeling what that looks like, I think, you know, those videos have always been kind of a little treasure for us.
Well, I'm sure it's, they're not so, I mean, I still didn't have hair in those videos, so it wasn't all that long ago. But yeah. In our national presentation that we do all over the country, 350, 400 times a year, we point back to your program all the time, especially SAFE. That is an exemplar of a program that everyone should be looking at to make sure that you have an understanding of how to address your special needs population. And we should always be thinking of them first in any crisis. Doesn't mean that we're necessarily going to, if we're evacuating, we may not evacuate them first because their environment they're in, if it's safe and it's suiting their needs, it might be the best place for them, but we need to think of them first. But we do always point back to your program. And
that's awesome.
in our presentation to this day, we have the slide up that with the QR code that gets you right back to your website.
Yep.
And then I'll, shamelessly, I'll plug iloveyoguys.org. So if you go and download our 2025 Standard Reunification or Standard Response Protocol Operation Guide, you'll find information there. I think it's around page 3031, where you'll find information about drills and versus exercises that will kind of help guide that conversation as well.
That's great. That's great. I know that from the federal side of things on schoolsafety.gov, there's a dedicated portion to emergency preparedness, drills, training. Really great to see models from different states across the country. I think in my time in schools, certainly it starts with, well, what does my local jurisdiction require, right? How does that fit my population, and what's the way that we're going to go about doing it? And those are some great places to go check those things out. So, Pat, I want to build a little bit on what you said there as we move into the next part of our session today, which is thinking about if training is about the muscle memory that everyone needs, if drills are about the muscle memory, what's training then? And how are these terms different? I think sometimes I'm probably guilty of it. We intermix them, but drills and trainings are part of our safety portfolio, and they build upon each other and are equally important in our systems of safety. And so can you guys help us understand what is the difference? How should we think about the difference between drills and training in our context? And what are some of the most common trainings that school leaders are spending their time on, working with community partners to implement right now?
So for me, I mean, training is the bigger umbrella, and drills are a component of the training. They happen to be kind of the last step. That's how I look at it. So long before we ever get to a drill, we're going to talk about what our protocols are. We're going to make sure that everyone in that facility knows the protocols, knows what is expected of them during that crisis. So that's the training part. It's the conversations, it's reviewing materials, it's maybe even walking a classroom, doing walkthroughs like hallways, things like that, to make sure that everyone understands this is the game plan that we have. And so this is just like sports, right? We're gonna look at 100%. A play. We're gonna look at a play on the board long before we ever go out and try to run that play.
Sure.
And so the drill part of this is the running the play part.
Gotcha.
And we are trying to create muscle memory, muscle habit. That's what the drill does. It also can identify gaps. So maybe you've missed a part of your play that you thought you had covered, and then the drill will say, oh, by the way, we missed this one thing. Maybe you didn't do lock lights out of sight. Maybe you locked the door and went right to the corner and forgot to turn the lights off. So the drill will expose those gaps that you have, and then you can train, and you circle back and kind of start the cycle all over again. We're going to train to that to make sure that we understand that we need to turn the lights off as well. So training is conversations, it's walkthroughs. Drills are the last part of that, where we're going to practice what we just learned.
And we frame it really similarly with a hierarchical approach, where it begins with the teaching, right? Because I'm just going to say, for me, it always begins with the teaching, right? But just kind of like you were saying, as you prepare for a big game, right? There is this teaching time, there is this instructional time, there is this direct instruction even, or modeling that happens first, right? So there's that teaching, which then moves us into some practice time, practicing discrete skills, exploring a little bit. And then kind of that end cap piece of the training, I would agree with you, is drills, right? And we can still learn a lot from those drills. They are almost our opportunity to test the system, test the protocol, but they continue to be part of the training as long as we are using them as a teachable moment. So when they're done, we want to gather everybody and debrief on it. We want to talk about it. How did it go? What are your ideas? You know, what kind of feedback do you have? Really kind of engaging folks, and that's really kind of how we really formalize that information or that knowledge in the brain. So it's really kind of carving these neural pathways and formalizing them through a progression or a continuum, if you will.
Yeah.
I was just going to say, and the training is not just for the adults.
100%.
Yes. The training is definitely, it's for everyone who's in that facility.
Right.
Or everyone who's, to use the sports analogy, everyone who's going to play in the game needs to get the training.
Sure.
So that's a really important component to not miss, is we have to be having conversations with our students as well. Right. Age appropriate, of course, but we need to have conversations with our students.
And I think they all really boil down to, I think sometimes we overthink with big multisyllabic words like, you know, developmentally appropriate, but really it's what's your role, you know, as you know, little Susie in second grade with her unique profile, what can she do and what is expected of her? And we are guided by that when we think about what is developmentally appropriate. What's her age? What's her stage? What are some adjustments that we might, you know, need to make? And so we have a variety of resources that really kind of help folks to pinpoint and better identify where any individual is, because it's not just our students that we have to consider. We also have to consider our adults. You know, is there a trauma impact? You know, where are they on that kind of continuum of readiness, and really looking at, you know, where is this group of people? How can we best meet them where they are with this conversation and this training, and make it really meaningful for them so that they know what their job is. Everybody needs a job.
Yeah.
That really brought a couple things out for me. Thanks for sharing that. You know, we talk about a culture of safety for the schools, right? So getting everyone in the building to understand their role helps build buy-in to our culture of safety,
100%.
that it's not just something else we do, right? Finding a way that it's appropriate that each person is participating. For a long time it was, just maybe the school administrator needs to know what the plan is, right? Or now everybody in the building has a role. But there's also a virtuous cycle to the idea that trainings and exercise build on each other, and that continues to build and advance our culture of safety. So when we think about training school staff and students on emergency procedures, when this happens, our school is going to do Y. How can we help maximize the effectiveness of those trainings? And what actions specifically do you see that administrators can do that help these trainings be really impactful so that when they're needed, they're ready to go?
I mean, for me, I think it starts with common language. And that's kind of at the origins of the standard response protocol, was like, we just need common terms that our teachers know, our students know, our first responders know.
All your players,
all
right?
All the players, absolutely. So we're going to call back on that the rest of the day.
Exactly. It's going to be all about sports, everybody. Just hold on.
Football season's almost here.
It is.
But it's developing that common language and then making sure that everyone understands that common language. So that's the first place to start. Eliminate confusion. So that's what the common language is going to do. That's where I would start. And then the other thing is, we were to kind of go back to the other conversation too about the training real quick, is this doesn't have to be anything elaborate.
Yeah.
It could be literally, you can go through the 5 actions in 5 minutes.
Right.
And you can use the poster that's on the wall. If you have a standard response protocol poster or whatever that protocol that you're using is, whatever that is, point to that material that's on your classroom wall and talk to the teacher and spend 5 minutes with each teacher throughout the first semester. It's not that big of an ask. You'll probably do it in a matter of a week. Yep. Just 5 minutes, go through. Do you understand what these things are? Do you understand why we do that? Yep, that's a good place to start. Would you feel comfortable talking to your class about this, your students? I would. Okay, perfect.
And those little 5-minute chunks, I mean, we don't have a lot of big chunks in education, but we do have a lot of these little slivers, and making meaning out of those slivers around something that really everybody wants a piece of, including our students, is a powerful thing. But I like what you were saying too. Essentially, we're making it accessible, right? So if everybody knows what this means, we're all using the same language, it's accessible to everyone. You know, everybody, this doesn't feel like there's some kind of like super secret plan that is only the privileged people know about, right? Everybody in that building has a right to be safe and to know what their role is and what is, you know, what they can do to be safe in that process. I think too, kind of back to those little slivers of time, one of the experts that we work with a lot, Paul Tim, we were just talking about Paul earlier, you know, he advocates for something, I would do this all the time with my students, but I like how he framed it and named it as a stop and think drill, right? So, you know, when you do in your day-to-day somewhere with students have kind of a little chunk of time, it's like, okay, we're gonna stop and think, you know? I'm gonna present you with a thing that's unexpected. And you guys are gonna just right here, right now, talk about what do we do? What do you recommend? It's not an actual emergency, but it is exercising and carving those neural pathways that we're talking about, and they're really powerful. It's almost like we're planting seeds that we can continue to foster through continued conversation.
Yeah. I told Paul that I might be bringing this up, so I'm glad you brought this topic up as well, because it really is, again, it doesn't have to be elaborate. It's just and you don't even have to call out the crisis. You could just ask the question, spend 15 seconds thinking about right now, what if there was an emergency? What would you do? It can be very, you know, it's like, we're not going to get super specific. It's just spend 15 seconds.
An unsafe situation, a safety situation, whatever it is.
We're probably going to think about, well, where are the exits around me? You know, you might think about if there's an AED near me. Those are some of the examples that Paul uses in his training as well. But I love that too. I talk about it everywhere I go.
Yeah, and it is super accessible, kind of brings the temperature down a little bit. It doesn't have to be big, fancy, or formal. It's just, it's a conversation.
Yeah, and don't leave your support staff out of these conversations.
Right.
I think it's really important to make sure that your kitchen staff know about this. Your custodial staff knows about this. They are key people in that school. They are the students look up to those, and many times the students look to those people for leadership, especially in the elementary setting.
Yes.
Custodian's often the most popular person in that building. And they can have a lot of influence on the students and help them through those situations as well.
That's right. Time and time again, we see students look to adults in the building when there's crisis, and we can't leave anyone out of that circle. So I really hear the purpose of helping the plan and the training be well understood by everyone, having common language, which increases efficiency and effectiveness of things. You know, something, I'd love your take on this, something I kind of get asked from time to time, and I think a lot of folks think about, is there a drawback to if everyone knows our response protocol that maybe bad actors will take advantage of that somehow? How do you think through that piece of?
Still hear that pretty steadily. I know, but it's like it's not top secret stuff, right? If there is a fire in the building, we will all be leaving. You know, like this is not top secret. If this room becomes unsafe for us. We have a handful of responses that we're probably going to take, right? One of which leaving, one of which maybe, you know, taking cover, you know, kind of depending on our circumstances. So we're not giving away like the alarm system passcodes or anything here. We are talking about basic safety options and actions that are going to go with our students and our staff wherever they go in the world as well. So, you know, that's kind of how we handled that when that conversation comes up. How about you guys?
We've actually started to incorporate this into our national presentation, and it's a whole part of our training called TMI. And it really comes down to, are we, because we get asked this question a lot, are we giving out too much information? Well, we kind of break that down and think about it. So what are we telling people? Well, we're telling them that we're prepared, that we do drills, that we take safety and security of your students and our staff very seriously, that you are going to encounter a school that is well prepared for this. And don't think about doing that here because we're very well prepared. And so if that's too much information, I think we're okay with that. We don't necessarily we're not giving tactical.
No blueprints, no blueprints, no, nothing tactical because we're not doing tactical stuff with students and staff members anyway, right? We're just talking about really basic actions to take whenever you're in a situation.
I'm glad you brought up, I mean, these are not just school skills, these are life skills.
They are life skills.
So I'm glad you brought that up because you can extend that conversation throughout the day and then into the evening if you give your parents talking points to do that as well.
Sure.
And truly, those life skills will serve our students far beyond the school walls. They'll serve them at home, perhaps. They'll serve them in the grocery store, the movie theater, the house of worship, wherever life takes them. And that really is the point. I mean, I look back at like the work we've done over decades upon decades in fire safety, which has been really successful, right?
Hugely successful,
you know, and we through students have educated parents and grandparents who didn't have access to that kind of training, you know, once upon a time in their schools. And, you know, it's life-changing information. You know, how can I be safe if this should ever happen?
We're creating a generation that has a much higher level of understanding with situational awareness than my generation had, which I think is great.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. You know, Michelle, Pat, I have been lucky enough to attend trainings by both your organizations, some of the best. Where can school leaders go to find high quality, effective, evidence-based training? What resources do you want to point folks to?
So other than our two websites, which I would say, again, you know, free stuff is great. I love you guys and Safe and Sound Schools. We certainly have created a lot. We have collected a lot from other very generous folks. I think that's the one thing about this field is that it is all for the greater good. And so, you know, people share, they beg, borrow, and you know, and pass it all around. But a couple resources that I think are important for folks to know about. One that was just released from the National Academy of Sciences was a very in-depth, you know, research piece and report, pages and pages, but you can get a good summary on the website that really has looked at this kind of like emerging body of work, I would say, over the past couple decades, and done a really good job of providing some best practice recommendations around drills, specifically active shooter, and what that looks like in the school environment. And then I would say, too, our organization, Safe and Sound, has partnered with NASP, the National Association of School Psychologists, and NASRO, the National Association of School Resource Officers, for over a decade now to create and update best practice guidance around school safety drills and active threats. And the newest edition, I think it'll be our 4th edition, is coming out this fall. So stay tuned. You can visit any of those 3, Safe and Sound, NASP, or NASRO, to get access to that. But it'll kind of distill a little bit of what's evolving. You know, we talked a little bit earlier off camera about how this is an evolution. You know, we're learning, we're refining, we're getting better, we're getting smarter, and we're doing that because we're sharing this information as a community.
Yeah, I would point people to their state agency as well that's responsible for this. So nearly every state, I believe, if not every state now, has an Office of School Safety or something similar to that. So I would start there. That's probably where I would go, and make sure that you're connected to those people so they understand, they know that you're there and you know that they're there. So we're starting to build this community of people that are responsible for this work. That is a big part of this. And then from your community, then also expand that conversation outside of your district. Don't just talk to the people in your district. If you have private schools or charter schools that are within your district, which every charter school and private school in the United States sits within the boundaries of a K-12, public K-12 system, you all should be talking together. Let's make sure that we're talking and then start to bring in and expand that community. So let's talk to the districts that maybe border your district. Are we all playing are we using the same common language? Are we playing from the same playbook? So you start to build that out, but start with that state agency as well, because they might have local resources that pertain specifically to state requirements that you need to adhere to. And also, again, they might have connections that you don't know either. You know, my background way back when was public health. Public health is starting to have a lot more presence in this space as well, and I think the mental health resources that they can provide you are great if you're in a district that maybe doesn't have those readily available. So involve them as well. So just think about the reach, and man, who would I want to talk to about this stuff? Pick up the phone or fire up the email.
And people are surprisingly excied to talk to schools, right? They really do all want to help. I think they're, back in my day as a teacher, it felt like the schoolhouse, we had to figure it out, you know, ourselves, and nothing could be further from the truth. You know, there are great resources within our communities to help and support.
We do a lot of work. We've been working with the Navajo Nation now for about a year and a half, and that was a group that started out with about 8 core members, and over the year and a half, this has all been through just kind of this collective impact concept. people have just started coming to those meetings, and we meet every other Monday for 2 hours. And the room now is like, it's virtual, of course, because we're covering 3 states, but there's 45 people on that call typically. And it's all factions of people that have an interest, that want to play in the game and make sure that we're keeping our students and staff safe.
Building a culture.
Absolutely.
This is so important. It's bigger than just training and drills, right? But how do we think about community partners? As I work with schools, sometimes you can get in a rhythm of, well, we can't do that for this reason or that reason. One of my favorite questions to ask a school, and usually I'm coming in from the outside, is to say, hey, what's exceptional in this community? What do you guys do, right? And you start to identify what is it that's really great about both the school community, the broader community, and then can any of those things, any of those partners come and help us here at the school? I know that you both are experts in this area. I'd love to hear more, though. Can we get into this idea further about schools don't exist on an island? What are some of the strategies for school leaders to reach out to these type of community organizations, build partnership that can support preparedness efforts?
So I would point to a resource we have right on our homepage at Safe and Sound Schools, and that's our comprehensive framework for school safety. Okay. So super simple, 6 boxes essentially of key domains or areas where you want to target your outreach. If you don't already know the people that live in the mental and behavioral health bucket and the health and wellness bucket and the safety and security bucket and the culture and climate and community bucket, the leadership and law bucket and the operations and emergency management bucket, don't worry, you don't have to memorize it. You can just look at the graphic. But those are those 6 areas where there are human resources that already exist in your community that are set up for public safety purposes, and our schools, our kids, they're part of that ecosystem too. So all of these exist in some form or another in the schoolhouse or district or division, wherever you are in the country. But they also exist more broadly in the community. So many of our schools struggle with resources. They'll have some, they won't have all, but they can reach out kind of strategically. And I think your point to, where do we already have relationships or where do we already have good stuff going on? Let's start there, and then let's just continue to build the concentric circles and reach out to these other groups, these other agencies, faith-based organizations in the community, nonprofit organizations, other schools, and then it just kind of begins to snowball, kind of like your Navajo Nation example.
Absolutely. Sometimes it just starts with buying someone a cup of coffee.
Right.
Sure.
It can be that easy, and sitting down in a space where you can talk for 30 or 45 minutes about what you're doing and what they're doing and how you can help each other. Yeah. I don't want to get in too much trouble, but we've been working on a project kind of behind the scenes with the foundation. We're partnering with Zero Now on this one, zeronow.org, and it's called Bold Impact. And the idea is that we're going to help people build these networks. Yeah. We'll populate some of that information that helps you understand who should be involved with that. I think Zero Now's got a great resource called the Path to Safer Schools, which I really like, which we love, and we talk to them about that frequently. But yeah, it's called Bold Impact, and hopefully you'll see that linked from our website at some point in the next 6 months or so, and it will help people build those networks. But it's that out-of-the-box thinking, too. We talked about the public health part of this. People, I don't think 5 years ago, 6 years ago, people were thinking about maybe asking public health if they wanted to come to this conversation. But what do they bring with them? Well, not only do they bring the crisis mental health stuff, but they bring Narcan. Narcan, having that in your schools, that's an important part of your school safety culture. If you have a student or staff member who's in trouble and you have that resource available to you, you've just contributed to a safer school environment than you had before you had that Narcan. So it's those partners that you maybe don't traditionally think about. Don't stop with just law enforcement. Let's make sure that we have fire and EMS. And your county emergency manager, by the way, they can be the key to getting all of these people.
They can unlock. They really can. Yeah, absolutely.
So make sure that you're involving that emergency manager as well.
Yeah, I remember just kind of starting out in this work a little over a decade ago, and one of the great surprises was that there's a thing called an emergency manager in the community.
Yes.
And it was like eureka. I mean, these folks have trained, prepared, they live, sleep, eat, breathe, how do we move through crisis? How do we better prepare and plan for crisis? And who are all the people and the resources that we need? So it's essentially you don't have to reinvent the wheel.
Right.
You know, you can, as a school community, have your teachers focused mainly on education and growth and outcomes and student success if you have all of your partners all working together to support safety.
Yeah, they also sometimes have a checkbook.
They do, I know. Like, we like that.
Yeah.
We like that.
They can
yes.
help. Yeah,
Yes.
they can
yeah.
sit around and geek out about this conversation as much as
right.
the three of us
Yes.
can, which we did over lunch.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
Here at CISA, across the country, we have protective security advisors in communities. These are individuals with deep physical security, but whether it's your county emergency manager, a relationship through an NGO, your protective security advisor, some of the favorite things I hear that they say is, oh, I got a guy for that. You got a problem? I got a guy. It's not about having an individual person, but it's that those relationships are created 100%. So that when something comes up, we know some resources to go to. So, this is great.
I really can't think of a time where I've asked someone to have a conversation about school safety and security where they said, I don't have time for that.
No.
I've never had that happen in 30 years of 2 decades of talking specifically about that topic, but even a bigger expansion of that, it's like I've just never had someone say no.
Particularly, like if you think about those 6 kind of domains that I laid out, especially there, right?
Yeah.
So you might have trouble sometimes in terms of like state level leadership, you know, some of the political action work that has to happen out there to keep, you know, funding coming for our schools and such. But in terms of like your boots on the ground in your community,
yes.
Yeah, I don't think I've ever had that experience or heard of that experience.
They're invested.
People want to help.
Most likely their own kids go to your school, or maybe their
spouse
grandkids.
works there.
Absolutely.
Yes.
There's a connection there that they are interested in helping.
Our schools
they
are
want to help.
the hub, the center, the heart of our communities.
Yeah. Training and drills, foundational to building the desired behaviors for response. You guys talked about some comprehensive framework, the path. What I love about those examples are, well, they are so simple to understand, right? And really are designed for school leaders. Are there any other frameworks that you'd point to, or things that said, hey, if you're thinking about response and the planning around this, school leaders should know about X, Y, or Z?
Another great resource that's near and dear to my heart are the PASS guidelines.
Oh, yeah.
So the Partner Alliance for Safer Schools really has a very strong security and technology focus, which is helpful if you're a school leader who began as an educator or a classroom teacher, right? It's probably public safety is not necessarily, or security is not necessarily in your professional experience. So what they've done is created this free resource that helps schools think about the physical infrastructure, think about how we're setting the campus, the building, the tools, all of that, how all of that is set up for everyone's success. And you know, again, because accessibility is so very important, they have tiered this approach. So, you know, you can begin where you are.
Yes.
You know, you can begin building wherever you are, whatever your budget is, assessing the landscape literally, and rethinking, you know, how you are setting this learning environment up for everybody's success. So it's a brilliant tool. It's free. Lots of workshops, free workshops come with it, and they're a great partner. And you know, full disclosure, I'm on the board, so you know. Shameless plug there, but love PASS.
I would point people to FEMA. So I think it's really important when we talk about common language. There is a common language out there that's a national common language through NIMS and FEMA. Right. So incident command, so that IS 100C course, that's free online through FEMA. And I think that's really important for our school administrators to understand the common language and what you're going to hear if you find yourself in an incident command post. Yeah. And then there's 362A as well. So there's a couple of trainings out there that are free on FEMA, FEMA.gov, and I think those really important to get that information and understand it. It's not the most exciting conversation, but I can't think of a better way to spend a Saturday than to go take an IS 100C course online. It's great if it's rainy, or maybe it's not. Maybe there's not a Notre Dame game on that day. You can take that course, but that will help you a lot in your crisis planning and your overall. When you're thinking about the 5 phases of emergency management plan, you developing your EOP, understanding incident command language is going to help you through that whole journey. So that's a free resource that
I would say it also can help you plan your field day, a variety of different
graduation,
field trips, weddings, whatever. That structure is tried and true. It's proven, and it already exists within your your public safety. So even having some situational awareness, maybe you don't have to take it to Pat's level, but just having that understanding of that structure is so incredibly helpful.
It will help with the communication.
Without a doubt.
I love that the things we've talked about today are available at no cost and are designed to become where you are. You don't have to be at step 5 of your safety journey, right? It doesn't matter. There's spots you can plug in. That's really great. Pat, Michelle, I want to take some questions from the audience. And our first one is, as a parent, how can parents talk to their child at home about drills, especially if that young person is feeling the nerves about the drills and anxiety?
Well, so the key word is to talk, right? Don't be afraid to have that conversation. Want to have that conversation early and often. Ideally, there's already some of that teaching that's happened for the parents ahead of time. So if parents know the song sheet, right, they can support that conversation when their child comes back and says, hey, we learned about this thing called a hold today, and the parents can, oh, yes, I learned about that too at back to school night. They told us all about it. Did you try it out? What's it like? We can support those conversations. We can let our kids drive them, though. That's always a safe place to kind of operate from, so that we're not putting upon any ideas or thoughts that they're not ready for, right? Sure. They will come to us, I guarantee, with tough questions, right? We also don't always have to have the answer, right? Many times we won't, and I think sometimes if we feel that we must, as adults, have the exact right answer in the moment. But I would go so far as to say that for our students, for our own children, to be able to say, that's a really good question, and I really feel like we need to find the answer to that. I have some ideas about it, but who do you think we could go? Who do you think we could go to get information about? And really engaging the students. Well, I really trust our, Officer Smith, right? Or I know my classroom teacher, Mrs. Brown, and just engaging them in that strategy of where will we go to get this information is really important, so that they understand that we're not keeping information from them. There isn't anything that's top secret, but I would say just letting them drive that conversation. And Pat, you mentioned this earlier, but we don't need to be really highly specific about all the things that could go wrong in the world. We can really simply refer to these as a safety situation, something unexpected, an emergency even. I mean, these are words that will be within the vernacular of our young people. And they will also save from the potential of building anxiety or worry, which is basically our kryptonite here. We don't want the anxiety. We don't want the worry. That's going to make it really difficult for our students to function in terms of learning and growing. But also, should there be a crisis, we want to create that sense of empowerment. I know what to do. The people around me know what to do. And if I have a concern or a question, they want to hear from me and they want to problem solve with me. That's what I would say.
I've been advocating for this for a while, and that is when you have a drill. We just talked about drills and announcing those drills. We're going to train, then we're going to drill. We're going to announce those drills, not only to your students, your staff, but let's let our parents know. A letter home to your parents, letting them know we're going to do this type of drill on this day. This is what that is. This is what the protocol means. By the way, I love you guys. We have parent letters now available in 20 different languages, along with classroom posters. So. But then give them something more. There's one more thing you can do. You can give those parents talking points. So when your student comes home at the end of the day, what did you learn at school today? Well, today we had a lockdown drill, or today we had a secure drill. Oh, what's that? Just like you said. Right. We're going to continue that conversation, but we're going to give the parents some talking points so they're prepared for that conversation as well. We can help them with that and guide that conversation a little bit. Because again, these aren't just school lessons, these are life lessons. Let's extend this beyond the school day and talk about it at home. There's a lot of learning that happens around the dinner table or around that, the conversation in the evening when students see their parents or guardians. Let's prepare those parents and guardians with some tools to help them.
I think there was a time in our society where mystery was kind of cool.
Yeah.
It's not a thing
Not
anymore.
with safety, though.
Not with safety.
No, not so much, right?
Never with safety, right?
Mm-hmm.
But in general, it's not a thing anymore. No. Our young people have access to information at their fingertips. Actually, mystery to our young people is scary nowadays.
So true.
Right? And so I think it's so important.
That's a really valid point.
To take away the mystery.
Yeah, 100%.
Right?
I would encourage to Pat's point in terms of supporting the conversations and kind of the activities and the take-home version of this learning that's happening in school. You can find with our especially safe toolkits in the teaching and training guide, parent resources for these, and then also our Staying Safe program. We provide a lot of resources, basically homework. You know, think about. I know the three of us all did that. You know, that fire plan at some point, like in second grade. You had to go home and make that plan. You know, with your family, and those are productive conversations.
Yes. They were.
And we can do the same thing. You know, with these other life skills as well.
Yeah.
Take them home.
So, Pat, Michelle, as we begin to wrap up our conversation today, what could you each just point to maybe one thing that gives you hope? That's an exemplar of where schools have grown in this drill exercise space that will help them avoid crisis and navigate crisis.
Yeah, I think for me, it's the conversations that we continue to have, and while we don't ask for emails or anything like that when you download materials, we do see how much volume we're getting on our website, and so like we had between August 12th and 13th, that's right around the start of school, we had 5,500 downloads of our materials in 24 hours. So people are aware, and they care, and they're doing the work. So. You made a reference to Michelle and I being experts earlier. I think we're avid students. I don't consider myself
I would 100% agree.
An
yeah,
expert.
Lifelong learners.
Absolutely. So, and I think a lot of other people in the space consider themselves avid students as well, right down to the classroom level, and that's what we need. So part of that advocacy and being an avid student is always looking for the new things. So I'm just encouraged when I see people downloading the materials, because I know that that's their effort and their time. It's not me telling them that they have to do it. They're doing it on their own time and their own effort. So I think that's great. That gives me a lot of encouragement.
Yeah.
I would say, just in conversation with other schools, schools are, some of them preparing to go back, some of them are already back in. Those that are already back in, we've already heard from quite a few of them about drills they've had to do, unexpected safety situations that have come up, and overwhelmingly, what we've been hearing is, I'm so grateful I just had that training, or I'm so grateful that I did go to your conference this summer, or I'm so grateful I sat into your training on this or that, because it enabled me to do this, and we moved through this crisis that happened. I was literally just talking to a school community this morning on the commute in, and they had the funky smell in the cafeteria. It's pretty routine, and they were not able to figure out what this was immediately. So they engaged their evacuation protocols and evacuated everybody to an off-site evacuation location that they had predetermined, and that everybody but the kindergartners was very familiar with, because this was something that they had planned for, practice. This was routine. And interestingly, although they had mental health support available, should there be any need for that support, they have quite a few students who are on the autism spectrum or who have sensory issues, or for whom, changing that routine abruptly is a real challenge. But they didn't actually have, any need for those supports. They were able to move through these procedures and protocols and do it really successfully. In this one case, they had everybody out and accounted for within 4 minutes, which is pretty fast for a school population around 500. So hearing those success stories and hearing that people are putting the work in, and then when they are hit with something unexpected, they have tools in the tool belt that they're pulling out and they're using successfully.
The level of preparedness that we hear when we go and engage audiences across the country, the level of preparedness has changed dramatically in the last decade. Schools are, I rarely hear it can never happen here.
Right, and that was not the case when I started.
Same.
Yeah.
Right. So I think the level of people are taking this seriously, and the level of preparedness has grown exponentially, and it's wonderful to hear that because we are making a difference.
Yeah.
The collective we here.
Yeah.
I would say.
Everyone. Well, whether it's students, experts, leaders, you guys are both role models to me, and I really appreciate you spending the time with us today to do this. To all of our attendees out there, if you haven't had a chance yet, in your Q&A pod, you'll go ahead and see a post-event survey. Remember, if you're looking to get a participation certificate from today's training, to complete both the pre and post survey that's available to you, and we'll get those sent out in the next week to you. Pat, Michelle, thank you. On behalf of the CISA School Safety team, thank you to everyone that attended today's session and is working on a daily basis to build their culture of safety and enhance it. As we wrap up, I encourage you to join us at our future sessions. October 16th, we're going to focus on behavioral threat assessment management and tiered systems of support and how those can align. And November 13th with a focus on enhancing layered physical security to detect, deter, and delay bad actors. Thank you for joining us today, and we'll see you next time.